now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Greetings, boys, girls, and gamers, and welcome to the first ever episode of Reign Over Me, the Atlanta Reign podcast. My name is Shy Guy. I am joined today by my wonderful co-host, my partner in crime, Norcetto. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How have you been?
Oh, I've been very busy with Overwatch things going on right now, writing, casting, a lot of balls in the air at the moment, but it feels good.
Yeah, and it's about to get crazier. We got the season starting in less than a week, and it felt like it's so far away, and then it came all at once, and suddenly it's almost here.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It feels like we've been waiting for it for months, and these last few weeks have drug on quite a bit. Yeah. But why don't we go ahead and get on into it? And since this is the first episode, why don't we give some introductions to the people, let them know who we are, why we're here, what this whole thing is about.
For sure. Well, my name is Norcetto. I make YouTube video content for the Atlanta Reign. Not officially. It's fan content. But I started kind of following them once the team was announced. I was a big fan of the league in season 1, but didn't have a local team. So when Atlanta announced one, I kind of jumped on that. And I've met a ton of really cool people. It got me opportunities with a lot of places, including the Game Haus, who brought me here.
Yeah, I mean, we both kind of came to this by via the Game Haus. We are both writers there for this upcoming season. It's going to be a very interesting kind of experiment we've got going on over there with writers trying to cover all 20 teams individually. You and I are going to be taking the Atlanta Reign, and it should be a fun experience. But I got to say, so far you have kind of established yourself already as I would say the preeminent Atlanta Reign super fan on the internet.
I appreciate it. It's been really weird because I got started I wanted to learn how to make and edit video. I didn't actually expect people to really watch, and it's been such a warm response from everyone. It's really been it's been awesome, and people like listening to me ramble on. I had a whole season of passion built up for a team I didn't have, so kind of unloading that on the Reign.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same spot. I was more a fan of the league as a whole during season 1. I've been following Overwatch since before the league was even around, and been doing some casting as well. And then like yourself, have gotten into writing just recently and trying to expand out to other areas of content creation. So I mean, that's what brings us here today. And we've got the Reign to bring us together, and our love for Atlanta and the city and all the people in it.
Yeah, and with the with the season coming up, and with us being able to play games every week, this gives us a really good opportunity to go back and forth and really talk about the game that we had played the weekend before and what we're going to be playing the upcoming week, so we can really kind of dig in deep to how the team is playing. And you can check in with us every week, and keep up with the team as the season goes on.
Yeah, and speaking of the games that we've got coming up next week, it was kind of lucky for us that we were so disorganized in getting this first recording together, because in the time that we kind of put off doing this, the league finally came out and announced their preseason event, the community countdown, which is taking place this weekend for anyone listening in podcast land in the future. We are recording this on Friday afternoon, so we will try to have this out before Atlanta plays in the community countdown. They are playing on Saturday afternoon up against Boston. It'll be our first chance to get to see this team in action.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. It has no real bearing on the rankings or anything like that, and it's just going to be a really exciting opportunity to just see them play, because that's what we've all been waiting for. That's what we've been waiting for, is to just see them go up on stage, sit down, and just play against another pro team, because everything's been so secretive with scrims and everything that I'm just ready for it. And yeah, it was really fortunate that I don't know exactly why it took them so long to announce it, but no, I'm happy we have a preseason, and a lot of the little events that they're planning sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean they've got some kind of out there stuff. We'll have a few scrims on Saturday and Sunday to get our first looks at all these teams, but then they've sprinkled in some other fun stuff in there. We've got Anna Paintball, which our very own Masa is going to be taking part in. They've got Capture the Flag games, which Atlanta is going to play in. So it should be a good chance to get to see a lot of players in a little bit of a less serious environment, and one where everyone can kind of take it easy, enjoy themselves, and really make it a fun event for the fans at home.
It's really cool. Masa is actually going to be playing up against IDK, who is one of Erster's former teammates on Lucky Feature Zenith. So that's a fun little factoid for that Anna Paintball showdown. But how are you feeling about the Boston game? I know it's just a scrim. It doesn't really affect the standings or anything, but this is our first game. What do you think about Boston? I
think it's a really good team to go up against for their first game, because there are some kind of Overwatch League veterans, some people who have been forged by the fire of season one. You've got Gamsu and Note, who I think are a really spectacular tank line. They've got some very talented players on this team, but at the same time, it's not, I think, one of like the powerhouses of the league. You're not going up against, NYXL. You're not going up against London. Right. So I don't think you really have to be worried about kind of coming in and getting blown out in the first game. Even if you did, it's preseason. It's not like this really means a whole lot, but I think it'll be a good chance for the team to kind of get their feet wet.
Yeah. And with Boston's one of those teams that, it depends on what Boston you're going up against. I mean, we saw them in stage 3 go undefeated after their roster troubles that they went through, and but then in other times they were falling apart. There's been questions about poor management and the players' living conditions and everything. So it could go either way. It depends on how well, I guess, Boston has been doing in the off season, because there's such a wild card of a team to who you're going to see when they take the stage.
Certainly, and I have had a very hard time trying to kind of predict in my head where I think Boston are going to turn up, because, like I said, they've got some very, very talented players who have proven themselves on this stage, but there are still a lot of question marks on this roster at the DPS spots in particular. I mean, you lose a player like Striker from your team, and there's almost always going to be a drop-off there in some way. So I'm very interested to see what they look like, as well as how the Reign perform. Before we head into the regular season next weekend. And kind of speaking of that, one quick bit of news that we've got is that for that first game, which I believe is on Saturday of next week, the 15th.
That's Friday. Friday.
Oh yeah, never mind. I can't keep dates. I thought today was Saturday, but
fair enough. It's been an absolutely crazy week, and like with all the news and stuff coming out, and the fact that this weekend is getting the preseason is getting started on Saturday and running all the way through Wednesday. So we're gonna have a straight week of Overwatch League stuff happening after such a long drought. No, I completely understand.
Yeah. So on Friday, the 15th, there is going to be a watch party for Atlanta's first game at Battle and Brew in Atlanta. Big shout out to those guys, as well as the team for kind of helping put that on. The people over at, I believe, Payload ATL are kind of the fan group for the Reign are helping to put that together as well. So unfortunately, I am currently too far away from Atlanta to make it to that event. But it should be a good time. I'm really jealous of anyone who gets to go.
Yeah, it's been, I've been in talks with a lot of people taking time and energy and even their own money to help plan and make this thing possible. And it's going to be huge. It's as far as expectations of people, how many people are going to be there, it's we're looking at possibly capacity on the venue. Like there are so many people looking to show up, and it's going to be crazy. I'm definitely going to be there, and hope to be at more. I'm a little bit outside the city, but I've been this one. I knew I was going to plan and make sure I'm up there for. But yeah, if you can make it, Battle and Brew Friday, doors open at 5, and yeah, it's all ages. If you're under 18, you got to bring a guardian or a parent. But there's more information on their Twitter account and about specific venue regulations and everything.
Okay, so that kind of covers the news that we've got for this week, which brings us to kind of the main event. Since this is our first episode, we are gonna do something a little bit different here. During the season, where we're gonna spend most of our time talking about games that have happened, previewing future matchups. But since this is our first episode, we're going to be doing a preview of the team itself, of the Reign, and going kind of position by position to talk through all these people, our expectations, our thoughts about them, and just kind of give the fans a little bit of a primer for what they can expect.
Yeah, for sure.
So we are going to start with the tank line, which, I think is the backbone of any good Overwatch team. And, I think Atlanta has a very good tank line set up right now. It'll be a very interesting group to watch throughout the league. So
Absolutely.
We've got at main tank, we've got Pokepo and Gator are the two main tanks on the roster. And then Dako is the off tank. And, I guess we should probably start with Dako and Pokepo.
Right.
They are a duo that was brought over from Element Mystic, a Korean team that had a great deal of success in Korean contenders. And I think these two players were definitely some of the standouts off of that roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Element Mystic, they blew up in the Korean contenders regular season scene. They did show a little bit of struggle in postseason when it came to the playoffs, but in the time that Pokepo and Dako were playing for them, they kind of solidified themselves as one of the best tag duos in the world. Korea being the strongest region, arguably, and them being from one of the strongest teams in the region, it's they were very well known, and to get them as a set, to get them as a pair, to already have that synergy is going to be huge for like you said, the backbone of the team. To have them already synergizing so well and know how the other plays is going to be huge.
Yeah, and for me, this is kind of the one area of the roster where I have literally no reservations whatsoever. I think these two are both going to be kind of elite players in the Overwatch League, kind of with the potential, I think, for both of them to kind of find themselves in the conversation for kind of the top 5 tanks in the world by the end of the season.
I agree. If they just keep playing as consistently as they have in the past, like with one another, I agree completely. They'll definitely be in talks of the top tank line of the league.
Yeah. And then, even beyond that, I think Atlanta has one of the best two-way players that's used in the league. So for anyone that doesn't know, there's a kind of contract option that teams have where they can sign a player to what is called a two-way deal, where they can split their time somewhat between the Overwatch League team and then also play some of the games for the contenders team, the Atlanta Academy team in this case. So Gator is the one who's going to be filling that role for this team. And I think that is kind of the perfect position for him, because I don't necessarily see him taking a ton of time away from Dako, but I do think he's a very, very talented player and someone with a lot of potential moving forward. And to give him the kind of split time there so that he gets to see playtime, even if it's not on the Overwatch League stage, he gets the experience of working with the Atlanta Reign coaching staff, I think will be a very good situation for him.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think, I mean, like we said, there's already so much built up between the Element Mystic tank line that we got that we're probably not going to see a whole lot of Gator on stage. But something to remember is Gator actually came from the team Goats, who developed the wonderful 3-3 meta comp that we know and love today. So he was instrumental in that. Not only that, though, he has very strong in-game shot calling and game sense. He has coached before. He actually Blizzard took some action against him, and he had to step back from being able to play. And actually, XQC filled in for him, and he ended up being a coach for that period of time. So as far as being able to lead other people, and as far as being able to lead in game, like you said, he's going to be a great asset for the guys on the contenders team, that he can kind of, be that leader for that team, as well as just help out in strategy and planning, and even maybe come on stage and play a few games during the regular season.
Yeah, I think he could definitely get some playing time if we find ourselves in a meta where Goats like truly is dominant, which stage 1 very well could be. So there is a chance that I think he finds himself there. I do see him spending more of his time with the Atlanta Academy team, where he played in the last season of Contenders with that team and was kind of crucial for them in ultimately making it to the finals, and coming up through the league, having a really great debut season for the Academy team. So I'm very happy with that signing, even if he is not necessarily going to be on the stage all the time.
Right. And remember, with the two-way player, it's something very, very small. Like they're only allowed to show for maybe a couple of games per stage. So even if Gator does show on the main stage, we're not going to see a whole lot of him. But I don't think anybody should think that he's just kind of riding the bench. I have a feeling that when it comes to like VODs and going over or scrims and tapes of scrims and stuff, he is instrumental in making sure that everything gets looked at.
Certainly. And now we're going to move on to the European support duo for the Atlanta Reign, which is Kodak and Masa. Now, these are two guys that have been in and around the tier 2 European scene for a while. Kodak playing on a number of teams, most prominently he played on Snakes and 123 for a while, whereas Masa is mainly known for his run with Giganti in the first couple of Contender seasons of this year. So let's talk a little bit about these two.
Yeah, I love our support line. It's a little bit different than the way I feel about our tank line. Like you said, I have no reservations about our tank line. They've been working so well together. Our support line is different, but I'm still very confident because individually there's such strong talents. Masa, his in-game ult tracking and shot calling in that sense is insane, and his Lucio play is insane. And then on the other side, you have Kodak, who his aim is nuts on supports. Between his Ana and his Zenyatta, I memean, he could absolutely rival some of the best in the league. I've heard people call him Kodak compared to Jonak, with a 2 Ks at the beginning instead of 2 Js, just because of how talented he is. And they're very strong individually, and I really think they can work well together.
Yeah, I think Kodak in particular, I could see him being kind of a sleeper pick for one of kind of the most surprising players in the league for fans that are mostly Overwatch League fans. You don't necessarily have time to be covering all of these Contenders regions, to be diving very deep into them, and so Kodak is might be a player that is off the radar for some people. He hasn't had teams around him that have had the most success, but he has always individually performed very well, no matter what roster he's been on. So now that he is kind of surrounded by players that I think are more kind of up to his level, I am very excited to see what he can do in particular. And I got to say, I've been very impressed with how he's handled himself, just in terms of like whenever I see interviews with him, especially the Reign did a very good YouTube series, kind of player profiles of several of these guys, and Kodak was one of them. And just kind of the demeanor that he has. He's a very calm and kind of, I think, collected individual. So I have high expectations for him. But I think there will always be a little bit of a learning curve into the league.
Yeah, for sure. And people have said that. They've said that, new people coming into the league don't really get how much of a next level it is from what they're used to. So yeah, I definitely agree that there may be a little bit of growing pains for all these players that they haven't been in OWL before. So in Kodak specifically with several of the teams he's been on, he's had experience, but like you said, maybe it was in the region or something that it didn't. They weren't elevated to his talent because he's a very, very talented player. And something I did want to point out, and I think something a lot of people missed, is he was on Team Germany for the first German player in the OWL, by the way. But he was on Team Germany for the World Cup. And, when you're going up against the UK and France, and only 2 teams are allowed to advance, it's kind of hard to show out. But as far as performance against those teams, Team Germany had one of the best performances against the UK team of anyone that didn't make it to the finals, and he was a lot of the reason for that. And just because they lost and didn't make it to the actual World Cup out of qualifiers, a lot of people passed them over. But as far as his performance, it was insane.
No, certainly. I mean, that was where I think he kind of caught the eye of a lot of people for the first time, where they kind of got exposed to him, and very rightly, he was considered one of the better players who didn't wind up making it to BlizzCon, who didn't get the chance to show off on that stage. So very, very excited for him. The one thing that I will mention with this support duo, and it has nothing to do with these 2 players individually or how I think they will perform necessarily, but just the fact that Atlanta is coming into the season with only 2 supports on the roster is slightly concerning for me, just in the sense that I think Overwatch in general, if you look back at season 1, was a very, very chaotic place and very hard to kind of predict the performance of individual players. I'm not necessarily worried about either of these guys, but if you have injuries, if you have illnesses, if you have internal problems, you're a little bit stuck. And I think that is one thing to be mildly concerned about.
That's fair. We'll get to Sefi and our coach, but just to kind of quickly touch on the fact that he was in an OWL coach in season 1. He was a coach for the Shock for the first couple stages, and he got swapped out for a former, I think it was a Boston Uprising coach, Krusty. But I think that has given him hopefully enough insight to kind of be able to overcome a little bit of that. Just be able to understand that, like, he knows the pressures put on players, and if he's confident that these 2 are performing at the level that they need to for him to not be worried about it, I hopefully can put my faith in that. And I'm hoping that the reason we're seeing so many cutoffs at 8-person rosters is because these teams are hungry to sign people after the season starts, after they see what the meta is, after they see how the league and the other teams are performing. That's when I think we're going to say, okay, we need another support that can do this, or we need another tank that can do this with Gator or something like that.
Certainly. And on the note of having players to sign after the season even starts, I mean, if you even want to just look in-house at the Atlanta Academy team, I think Dogman in particular would be a really good option if something, God forbid, were to happen to Kodak. I think that would be a very solid kind of backup play for them. So they definitely have the ability to bring in people throughout the season if they feel they need that. So and like you said, we do have like a lot of teams going for these smaller rosters, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Kind of if you look at season 1, the reason I think teams with big rosters were kind of optimal was you had a 40-game season there, whereas we're down to 28 this year. I think we'll have a little less problems with kind of burnout, with players overworking themselves throughout the season. So I think you can definitely get by with a much leaner roster, and it might actually be the better option. Because I mean, if you look at what London Spitfire did last year, the way that they surged at the end of the season was in large part to how they cut down to like only the most essential players on their roster.
Right, and they cut some great players to get that essential group out. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right that like there is that fear. What if something happens? There's been players that have had wrist problems. There have been players that have needed to take a break from mental health issues. Like there's been a lot going on. So absolutely, only having 2 supports is it is a little worrisome, and it's something to keep an eye on. I assume there's some kind of plan for something like that, but I really think it has to do with being able to sign people after the season starts.
Certainly. Well, we've spent enough time on the supports here, so let's get to the thing that I think everybody is probably waiting to hear about, and that is a DPS. And once again, Atlanta going with a pretty lean unit, a 3-man DPS unit here, with Inlayer, Erster, and the man himself, Defran.
Yep. Who to start with? Pick someone. Let's start with someone.
Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's talk about Defran first. He's the elephant in the room when it comes to this team. So let's go ahead and take care of this.
Let's talk about Defran. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know Defran, which maybe haven't been following the league or anything, or following Overwatch competitive or anything like that, but Defran played in with a team called Selfless a year and a half ago, before the league really, it's probably been about 2 years at this point, before the league even really got started. And he is known for having amazing mechanical skill, amazing aim, amazing tracking, and he's just had a little bit of issues with some disciplinary action taken against him for some mistakes he has made, as he would say. And so yeah, he's a little bit of a wild card, but he is widely considered one of the most mechanically skilled players in the world, and he has a very, very large fan following outside of the game, and a lot of people did not expect him to even be in the league. But here we sit with one of the superstars of the Overwatch streaming world, one of the most mechanically gifted players.
Yeah, and when it comes to Defran, I will say cautiously optimistic going into the season.
I agree.
I don't want to kind of put all my eggs into the Defran basket, because that can be dangerous, and I don't think that's something that the team should do either. I don't necessarily think they need to be coming into this planning on having Defran play every single game. But from what we have seen from him recently, I think mentally he is in a much better place. The fact that he made the decision to come to the Overwatch League, to kind of give up a little bit on his streaming life that he was having before this, I think says a little bit about his maturity. And I think he has seemed like, from what I've seen, in a little bit of a better place coming into the season, in the right mindset that you want for a player. And I think he's the kind of person where once he is in the league and he is surrounded by the best talent in the world, and they are kind of pushing him, then that will be the right situation for him to kind of finally meet his potential that we saw so long ago.
Yeah, I agree, and I really, really look forward to seeing what he can do. And yeah, I agree. He's in a much better place, and he's surrounded by a very, very good support structure. But to touch on something you said, like, I don't think we should expect him to be playing every game or anything like that. Seffi, the coach Brad, he was interviewed, and he was talking about that and said that Defran was actually the last person they signed because they wanted a fully ready to go team with or without him, because no, they're not trying to hide the fact that he's had a volatile past, and then they're not trying to ignore that. They're saying that like we're saying, he can reach his potential playing in this environment, but if he doesn't, they have a fully built and scouted team with or without him.
Yeah, so I mean, one way to kind of look at that is literally just that he's kind of icing on the cake. You know, the
Perfect.
team
Yeah.
was already there, and if he could come in and he can, be his old self and put up kind of ridiculous performances every now and then that is just a little bit of a bonus for this team that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think that is a good way for teams to kind of, or for fans to kind of look at DeFran as a player. And one thing I will know is that we talked about him a little bit already. We've got Seffi on the team as the coach, and he is also coming from a background of having worked with DeFran before in Selfless. That was, I think, a large part in what got DeFran to come to the league in the first place. I don't necessarily think
Absolutely.
you would have seen, if Atlanta weren't interested. I don't necessarily think you would have seen DeFran on another team in the league right now. So maybe there's something there that makes Seffi kind of the DeFran whisperer to an extent. And as far as his kind of mental state, if you look back to when he was on Selfless, when he had those issues, they were in like a tiny team house. He was living in like this small area off of their kitchen. It wasn't even a room. He just had like these curtains set up in the middle of their team house to like separate his space in the house from the rest of the team. Now they're in this like absurd mansion in LA. They've got all the support structure of an Overwatch League team is there. So all of that for me kind of is the recipe for success for DeFran. If he can't, live up to his potential here, then I don't think he ever really will.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and maybe it'll be too much stress, too much pressure, and maybe he just wants to stream and live that life. But he seems really excited. He seems all in on it, and I really, not even for the team to do well. I hope he's, I know he's had some struggle in the past. I hope he's doing good. I hope he is having a good time and is in a good place.
Okay, so that's enough about our main man DeFran. So let's move on to the rest of this roster, and let's start. I guess let's go with Inlair to move forward here. He is another player who I think is kind of primarily known for his hit scan play, much like DeFran. He's coming from a background. He played on some European teams, but his main kind of exposure as a player came from his time on last night's Leftovers.
Right. And while he's a Russian player, and he was playing with last night's Leftovers in a very high level competitive setting and doing well on like 200 ping, like a very, very high ping, and putting him on LAN I'm expecting or hoping that it's going to greatly improve his already astounding play.
Certainly. I mean, and to talk a little bit about last night's Leftovers, because they are such an incredible story, and much of that team ended up becoming what is now the Atlanta Academy team. Seffi was involved with the coaching of that team as well, so there's a lot of ties to that Atlanta team. But Inlair has always been an incredibly talented player, but has kind of been held back a little bit by those issues of not being able to play on LAN, to play on any kind of reasonable ping. So it is somewhat hard for me right now to say exactly what I expect from him, because we've never really seen him unleashed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a fair point. Like it could be, he's played really consistently even at a high ping, but when he gets on actual LAN, it kind of screws with him a little bit. Or it could be he gets on LAN and he just goes nuts and just pops off on everyone. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but I've heard very good things about his consistency, and that word consistency keeps popping up around him, and I'm hoping to see it.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of exactly what Atlanta needed out of this position. I think you are going to have the potential pop-offs at really, really crazy high levels from the other two DPS on the roster, from Erster
Right.
and from Defran. And if Imler can kind of be that solid, steady presence that, always performs no matter what the situation, I think that is kind of perfect for the Reign.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. In season one, one of the best widows when it came to dueling anyone was Linkser from the Houston Outlaws, but he was streaky. When he was on, he was on. When he was off, he was off. And those games when he was not consistent, it was a chink in the armor, and it let the whole team kind of fall apart a little bit. So consistency, even if it's not like these huge crazy plays, if you can just have just crazy consistent play, that will carry you far.
Certainly. So I'm excited to see what he can do now that he's got the opportunity to really prove himself on this stage. So that is a very exciting prospect, and kind of equally exciting for me is the final DPS on the roster, Erster. This is a guy who has played primarily in the Chinese contenders region, despite being a Korean player, was playing in China for Lucky Future Zenith, and was part of a team that really just kind of rolled that region, that was
Dominant,
very, very dominant.
Yeah, like if Erster is not on your fantasy draft right now, go and change it now before the league starts. Like this guy is there are so many people, like every now and then I'll just see like a tweet pop up and be like, hey, just a reminder, people are sleeping on Erster. People don't know a whole lot about Chinese contenders, and the people who do are like, you need to watch out for this guy.
Yeah, and he's going to be the primary flex DPS player for this team, the one who picks up the Genji, the Pharah, the Hanzo, all those kind of grab bag of heroes that you
Brigitte and goats.
Yeah, I hope. I am worried because going into the season that it feels like he is probably going to be relegated to Brigitte duty quite a bit.
He's going to be in Brig jail. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be a little unfortunate. Hopefully, as the season goes on, the meta will change a little bit, and we will get opportunities to see him at his full powers. Because when he gets unleashed, especially on Genji, he is a monster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. His Genji, I've heard great things about his Pharah. And hopefully a lot of these small changes that have happened on the PTR are, from what I hear, Goats is still going to be played, but it might not be as dominant as it has been. So I really hope someone as talented as Erster doesn't get stuck in Brig jail. It was hard enough watching Sugar Free play nothing but Brig in contenders. So I really want to see these all-stars actually get a chance to pop off on the people they're good at.
Yeah. Erster for me is... He might be the single player that I am most excited to see the transition into Overwatch League, because it's obvious from watching him that he is kind of supremely mechanically talented. Mm-hmm. But he has been stuck in a region for a long time that just wasn't able to kind of compete with him and the rest of his teammates. In Contenders China, Lucky Future Zenith was absolutely dominant. I think they won, or I think they lost one map of the last season, which is just nuts. So it's a little bit difficult to kind of gauge where he stands. I think he's definitely going to be one of the better DPS players in the league, but without seeing him up against that kind of top level competition, it is somewhat difficult to know exactly where he lands.
And something interesting about the Erster pickup is that he's, like you said, from Chinese contenders, and with how many new Chinese teams and players and everything there are coming into the league, having that insight into a region that not a lot of teams have insight into might end up paying off for us, because they do some weird things in China when it comes to different comps and stuff like that. I think that was there was a lot of the 4 DPS comp was done a lot more in China than other regions, and they just have some new insights and different perspectives on things that Erster might be able to bring over and help us out with.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly a valuable thing, and I think that will actually be one of the things that Atlanta in general kind of have going for them. We'll get to this a little bit later on when we talk about kind of the team as a whole, but this is a very, very diverse international roster. We've got players from, what is it, like 5 different countries.
I think it's 6. No, it's 5. No, it's 5.
Yeah, no, there's 3 Koreans, and then everybody else is from the rest. But then you've got, on top of that, you've got 4 different contenders regions being represented. So kind of the style of play that all of these players are used to is a little bit different, and that might lead to some struggles early on. But I think that kind of variety of perspective will definitely be an asset going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Philly kind of proved in season 1 that a mixed roster can perform with the best of the best, and I think that was kind of a proof of concept that our coaching staff looked at and said, this can absolutely work. Instead of trying to pick up from a specific region, let's pick up the best talent we can, and we'll polish it up and make it better.
Yeah. And speaking of our coaching staff, why don't we move on to that part of the team right here? They are, once again, I think a fairly diverse coaching staff. We've got the head coach Sefi, who is one of the most experienced coaches in all of Overwatch. I mean, he dates back to that Selfless team that he was basically responsible for constructing and putting together, that took the NA scene by storm back in the day. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, he was on Shock last season, was largely responsible for putting that roster together, and kind of looking at them now, they're one of the most hyped up teams coming into season 2. And then to kind of round things out, we've also got Silence, who was with Sefi on last night's Leftovers during their recent run. And then finally, Kasaurus is the player development coach. He is a former pro player from Europe. If you know him, it is probably from his time with That's a Disband. Has recently transitioned into the coaching role. Spent some time with a European team called One Point, and I think it's going to be really valuable to have a guy like that who kind of knows the mentality of the players and has kind of been in the trenches before.
Yeah, and Kasaurus specifically is the player development coach. So he's the one guy who is spending the one-on-one time with these players. Like, the other coaches are looking at the numbers, they're looking at the team play and stuff. Kasaurus is going to be the guy that knows what it's like in the game and can sit down and be like, okay, this is a perspective I want you to look at. This is something I want you to think about, and kind of direct that. So having him come from that professional play to being a coach is fantastic. Silence, who came over, he was the analyst for last night's Leftovers. He was actually, he made a name for himself with a ridiculous post on Reddit. It was like a 37-page review of playing goats, and he had like a 20-page or like a 15-page follow-up on a different comp, and like just the analytical mind on that guy is insane. He keeps a low profile, but the stuff that he has written is very, very in depth, and I can see why they picked him up.
I think he's a really good fit next to Sefi, who, if I had to kind of characterize him as a coach, he is kind of more suited to the personality side of coaching, dealing with the interpersonal stuff rather than necessarily being kind of the greatest tactical mind in Overwatch, which I think is actually a really legitimate strategy as a head coach in this league, because I think a lot of your kind of tactics and strategy are going to be coming from Silence, who, like you said, is big brain. But then the players themselves are going to be largely responsible for that kind of stuff. I mean, if you look at our season 1 champions, the London Spitfire, their coach was not really very involved with kind of the planning and the tactics of the team. He's more there to kind of keep everybody emotionally stable, make sure they're in the right mindset. And I think that's what Sefi will kind of excel at.
Yeah, and from the interviews I've seen with Sefi, like, and I said this on Twitter, I think that the more that I've learned about Sefi, like, the more I'm almost considering him my favorite pickup of the team, just because of just the way that he looks at coaching and everything. I mean, with Selfless, they pretty much invented the Selfless comp, which was just just spawn camping with sheer force. And he's explained that like his mindset is, maybe look at things a little bit different way. Don't get stuck on a certain way of looking at a problem. Try and solve it different ways, which is big. And the other part is that he these are pro players. They have the mechanical skill. They can practice that themselves. They know how to play. They know the game sense. A coach doesn't need to go in. This isn't Little League. He doesn't need to go in and teach them the fundamentals. A coach at this level, like in London, you need to come in and give them a philosophy to play behind. Like give them a shared mindset to use their skills with. And I think he is aware of that. He's been very open about his any kind of shortcomings or failings that he's had, and reflected on, this is where I made a mistake as a coach. This is what I learned from it. And this is where I'm going to take what I've learned and apply it to what I'm doing now. And that's just another big brain on the team. I'm so happy we signed Seffi.
Yeah, and I mean, that is going to be, I think, a very crucial skill, especially for an expansion team in this league, because I think at the beginning of the year, you are going to have a lot of those kind of learning moments, those times where you might fail, and you have to be able to kind of pick yourself back up, reset yourself mentally, and take something out of it that can help you improve going forward. And I think he has the right kind of experience and the wisdom to kind of bring that to this team. Yeah,
not to mention, like, how many coaches do you think, if someone sat them down and were like, hey, so if you could build your season 1 Overwatch League team again with what you know now, what would you do different? Seffi's actually getting the opportunity to do that. He built a team, saw what worked and what didn't, and then with him getting rotated over to Last Night's Leftovers and now being the coach for Atlanta, he gets this, okay, it's a fresh start. I get to take everything I've learned and rebuild another team. And that's an opportunity that is very unique for him. And I think it's going to pay off a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and one last thing on Seffi. If you look at every team he has ever been a part of, you got Selfless, you've got Shock, and then you've got Last Night's Leftovers. Selfless and LNL were both kind of remarkable stories. They came almost out of nowhere to really surprise people at the time of both of their success, and to really kind of take the world by storm a bit. And so, like, the history, the track record is there for Seffi. He has proven that he is capable of taking teams kind of beyond the expectations that people have for them. And then even if you look at Shock, that was a team that was always kind of built for season 2 in mind. Like that, I don't think most people really expected them with the roster they had to immediately kind of dominate the league. But they have grown significantly since then. Obviously, they've added some new players, but the core of what Seffi was able to build there, I think is actually very, very strong. And even though he's no longer with that team, his effects there are definitely still being felt.
Yeah, for sure. They weren't built for, like, the meta kind of solidified with the crazy, must pick mercy picks, the Moth meta and everything. And the team was built to be a little more DPS heavy and change off. He had a Lucio specialist on the team that didn't really get to play Lucio because of what was needed. It was just a little bit of a few missteps. I think if the meta would have been a bit differently, the team would have shown a little bit more of what they were built for. But yeah, I definitely think it was a team with future potential in mind.
So with that out of the way, that's now all of the team that we have gotten to cover. So let's transition to, I guess, a little bit of our overall thoughts about the team, our expectations for the coming season, and how we think they will stack up in the league.
Well, real quick, we did miss two other people on the coaching staff that I do find very important. One of which being Dong Men, who in this house we love and respect Dong Men, and he is the in-house translator, which we can quickly go over. Like, as a mixed roster, having someone in-house on staff that is always there to help with communication issues is going to be huge. And then the other person is Danny, who is he's insane. The guy's 15, I think, and he's an analyst, and he worked with, I think, Team Canada, and he is considered like one of the best analysts, and he's super young. So like him being on and us being able to use him over the coming years, hopefully, is going to be huge. But I want to make sure they get a shout out.
Yeah, I mean, to get that kind of development going, even within the coaching staff, is very impressive and shows kind of a lot of foresight. So I really like that move. And yeah, Dongmin, I didn't mention him as a coach specifically because that's not necessarily his role, but it is going to be just as crucial, I think, in the long term to be able to make sure that you can integrate, the 3 Korean players on the roster and make sure that, those lines of communication are not breaking down. So, his role is not necessarily kind of front and center, but it is going to be very, very important for the team.
Right. I also just kind of love Dongmin, so I had to make sure to give him a shout. But anyway, yes. So what are your thoughts moving on?
So, as far as the entire roster goes, I think they have assembled what has the potential to be a very excellent roster. It is very difficult right now to say exactly how that is all going to come together and how it will look on the stage. And it's a question that I don't necessarily think we're even going to have the answer to like a month from now, or even after stage 1. I don't necessarily think we're going to have a final answer on this kind of question, but the potential is there. And if they can get the team to kind of gel together, then, there is a lot that this team can do. And I'm, very much looking forward to their chances.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. I think that basically the barometer for success is going to be stage 2. During stage 2, if they start consistently winning games and having that, when a team goes in and plays, they have a certain style that they play. If they can go in and execute their style, develop their style, and not get spread apart or beaten by the opponents easily, and you can see them finding that groove, I think that will be when we can say, okay, I think they're starting to find something here. But as far as stage 1 goes, there's definitely going to be growing pains. These are people who have not played in the Overwatch League. These are people who, even in the case of DeFran, has not been playing in a pro setting. He's been playing on ladder. And it's just, there's a lot of questions out there. So, there is a chance, like you said, with all the talent that they could do huge things. But if they start they start out and are not performing so hot, that's not necessarily something to be super worried about. It's kind of expected for them to have a little bit of growing pains.
Right. Certainly with the international roster in particular, there are going to be problems with communication. To pull together this many players from this many different teams. I mean, the only 2 players on this roster who have ever played together are Poco and Dako. So to come into and kind of expect them to be at the top of their game right away, I think is a bit unrealistic. But right. Well, what I am looking for is, like you said, how they progress throughout the stages, how they kind of build their identity and how they are improving throughout, I think is going to be the more important thing. And, if, for example, if they can kind of pull off that cohesion a little bit sooner, a little bit ahead of schedule, then this is a team that I definitely see kind of, potentially even being in like the upper half of the league.
Yeah, I've said this for a while. Once I started to kind of really get a feel for the team, if they can get over any communication issues, the talent is there for this team to be in the playoffs. I absolutely see it. If not, they're going to be on the kind of in the same range, but on the other side, in the bottom 10 instead of the top 10. But if they can really gel, if they can put everything together, the pieces are there for a very, very strong team and a really exciting season.
And I will say, I mean, now that the playoffs have expanded significantly going into this season, we've got 12 teams that at the end of the year are going to be still in the hunt. You've got the 6 teams that will make it outright, and then the next 6 will be in the play-in tournament. If Atlanta can sneak into that playoff tournament, even if it's as the 12th seed, I think they become a very, very dangerous opponent and someone that other teams are not going to want to play against.
Exactly. And that's it. It was proven last year that you don't have to be the number one team. You just need to make it to the playoffs. And if you can make it to the playoffs, then the other teams need to watch out because it's not a sure thing for them. The fact that New York did not win season 1 is a testament to that. And yes, if Atlanta can find their way into the playoffs, every single team they face should watch out.
I don't think I could say it any better than that. And it has been a pleasure doing this with you here today, Norcetto.
Absolutely.
That is going to do it for the very first episode of Reign Over Me, the Atlanta Reign podcast. The name is still up for consideration right now, but we will finalize that soon and make sure that we have episodes coming out throughout the regular season covering all things Atlanta Reign. One last shout out before we go to anyone listening to if you're in the Atlanta area, please be sure to try to make it out to that watch party on next Friday at Battle and Brew. I think it'll be a great time. I'm very sad that I can't be there, but I'm going to do my best to make it down to Atlanta for at least a couple other games throughout the season. And there's nothing in the world that could keep me from making it down there for the homestand weekend.
Yes, July can't get here soon enough. But yeah, if anybody watching, listening has any recommendations for a name or anything, I actually kind of like what we've gone with, but we're still open for consideration. And if you have anything you guys want to hear or any questions or anything like that, definitely let us know.
Yeah, you can reach out, find us on Twitter. I'm sure we'll make a Twitter account for the podcast, I'm sure, but you can find me at Shy Guy OW, all one word.
And you can find me at Norcetto, Norcetto.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our first episode, and we will see you again next week.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
I want to tell you another funny.
Really? Yes. Really? Yes. Yes.
I want to tell you another funny.
Really?